Thank you so much, Thomas Lux, for that wonderful introduction and for making this opportunity available to me. Can you hear me very well in the back? I'm a little reluctant to touch this contraption. But what I'm going to do is, the time I have is jump around a little bit in the Southeast. And for me, the Southeast is just not the southern states of America, but as Thomas said, I'm from Barbados, which is south of America, and also Barbados is the most easterly of the Windward Islands. And I think I might visit momentarily the east coast of Brazil as well, which is even further south in South America. The first piece that I'd like to read for you this afternoon is called Lulu Seamen. Somnambulistic, reclining on a shore's sandy couch, I inhale the sea's raw wholeness and its ancestral hum. Slowly, my eyes open, careful not to disturb nature's hold. Through eyelids winking with light, I read the black letters on her nodding prow. Lulu. The Yamaha outboards already hoisted up. The seaman already wading in the water. He throws the grappling anchor into the shallows and returns to her. Yanking out a small net fat with fishes, he hooks and wraps the net's drawstring around one oarlock. Undulating water softly rinses the netted, buoyant cargo. Seaman reaches into the boat, withdraws a short spade. Untying the drawstring that slips from the boat like an eel, he heads for the shore with his load. Glancingly, he speaks to me, lays down the net like a comma on sand, digs a deep hole. The dead fishes leap into the crater. He garments them with sand, withdraws a scaling knife with an arc of his hand. That sandy sheet shields the sun's hardening rays, lightens his task. One by one, cavali, garfish, snapper, and eel are touched by his blade. Hills of scales, guts, and fins rise around his calm, thorough endeavor. Labor done, he shovels the refuse into the grave, fills it with sand. In the background, almonds, sea grapes, and casuarinas line the beach and punctuate a cloudless blue sky. Under one waving casuarina, a man holds a bike. 3 boisterous young men cut across the scene. A white pit bull trots before them, leashless, blind to its own terror. The man drops his bike and scurries up the tree. The dog doesn't notice him. The loud ones laugh. Taking no chances, I rise and leap headlong into the sea. Surfacing in a spurting fountain, I shake water from my eyes, turn toward shore. The man and his bike are gone. The young man and the dog, gone. But Seaman still there, examining his finished work. He calmly places the clean fishes into the net. Workshop tidied. His ready-to-cook catch wrapped around an arm. He saunters towards the dry sand and sheltering trees. In the shallows, gray-hulled Lulu nods in eternal agreement, resting her wood, guarding the beach, the 8-inch steel propeller, an asterisk on the sea's blue page. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to go to Cullowhee in North Carolina to do a presentation there at Northwestern University, and had the opportunity to visit an Indian reservation. And this next piece came out of that visit. In this poem, I make a reference to Kuku, which is spelled C-O-U-C-O-U, And that's the national dish of Barbados, which is made from cornmeal and okra mixed up and served with hot fish and lots of gravy. Is your mouth watering? Okay. And I thought to myself, fancy, finding an echo of Barbados here in the mountains of North Carolina. And this is called the Myth Keepers. High in the mountains near Calloway, spreading 5 acres at the base of Mingo Falls, 11,000 Cherokees gather. Their whole history in lined, tightly drawn faces. How the land was lost, how they regained these few acres, how they make their own decisions again through the tribal chief and his council. Mary Little John has always lived under these canopies of pine and spruce, through which rivers run and rapids sound ancestral names. At the reservation's entrance, welcoming signs declare authentic Cherokee craft. Our main economy here is tourism, says Mary. Soon the gambling casinos will open. Most are for it. Our chief is pushing for it. Her cousin points to the Cherokee Dependency Center, her people's Betty Ford. They stagger from camps all across the country to these healing hills, to the eternal soothe of water, whose ancestral hums within the frond-covered bosom of the mountains. Half a mile inside where tourism no longer follows, Mary puts the Red Rover onto a gravel embankment. She points to a water hole and the foaming shallow rapids where they played as children. I am stirred by the clarity of water. A trout farm swimming into view completes the town. We head back to the tourist center. Sequoia's bus erupts in regal cedar from the museum's front lawn. Inside, I open up and embrace the origins of fire. I expose myself to the sound of that flame and hear a familiar ring. It telegraphs south through Antillean air to Dominica's fern-wrapped hills, to Guyana, winged with dreams of gold, where the same ancestors who had sailed the Bering Straits brought their stone and iron culture, their adze and bonehead arrows, their bone flutes and canoes chiseled from the shanks of trees. Outside, in the teepee restaurant, I calmly chew bean balls, collard greens, and fried chicken. The first Cherokee, the last 2 typically Southern. And I think of home, of cornmeal and okra kuku, with bits of cavalli swimming in the center. It was the bean balls cornmeal that roused such remembrances, such feelings of hybridity and connectedness to the damned and the blessed. Okay, this next piece originated in Atlanta, but it came about as I was setting out to go to England to do some presentations up there. And it's all about planes and flying and the kinds of things that we can learn from such journeys. It's called the Hour of Faith. The jetliner arcs and beaks towards the runway like a heron. A stanza, white as meringue, blots each window. I feel Chicago's sub-zeros through sight alone. As I push against air pressure within the exit shaft, cold fingers try to touch me to see if I am real. Those elongated lances of air escape through spaces in the shaft's joints and chill me like xylophone notes. I wasn't even leaving the airport to enter fields of snow. I was merely connecting. So I moved a gray woolen coat from my arm and put it on. I entered a lobby that's light with traffic. I am England bound. I am bound by history to every dimension of cold. Airborne, I continue with Toni Morrison's jazz. Malvern, wrenched with sorrow for the Barbadian Winsome Clark, whose husband in Panama sends money that's intercepted and never reaches her. She and the children drown with insufficiency. Her hope rests in images of Barbadian sunshine and big trees. I'm not Winsome Clark, but I too know the chilly fingers of deprivation, of calculated disinterest, of dripping indifference, of whirling around with no systems of support, of the loneliness penetrating drop by drop. That makes us playboys, patrons of nude dance halls, midnight cruisers, just to be near humans, just to hear human voices, just to feel some momentary warmth we know will flee by sunrise. The true value of planes is that suspended between heaven and earth, in neutral space, strangers may unite for a few hours, may speak their despair, knowing they won't see each other again, knowing judgment wouldn't follow them. They speak candidly of divorces, racism, flying phobias, or lighter subjects like good love and music. Where has all the good music gone to, my pharmaceutical neighbor says. Oh, the 80s and 90s produced one or two good individuals, but the 70s, man, that was a renaissance. Every race, every nation was producing great bands. Oh yes, I say, all those great folk singers and R&B bands. And don't forget Bob Marley. Tension broken, I sleep solidly for an hour. Something I've never done while flying. I felt there was something perversely indifferent in sleeping at 30,000 feet while hurtling through air at hundreds of miles per hour. Did I lack faith? Was indifference true faith? Knowing that, once suspended, having lost all personal control, there was little point in worrying. I would sleep even longer on the train from Heathrow to Leeds. And I've slept like a child in a speeding car. In train or car, once closer to the comforting earth. Heaven's interstates are suited for the trafficking of souls. Still, I reflect on that sleeping hour up there, that hour of returning faith. This next piece is called Paraplegic Diver. After punctilious suiting up by the leader, he was thrown into the sea 1 mile out. A smile rode his face in his curled fetal descent. The mid-morning sun lambent on the chosen water. He was the first to feel gravity's adjustments on this day, the neutralizing configurations as pressure increased, weight belt adjustment, swallowing, nasal control. Soon, he settled in the neutral space of the sea. He had no doubt done this many times before, even on this particular vacation, with these particular people, for no one gasped, stared, or eyed the leader, except me. One by one we followed him, found polyphony in the common salt of arcane gills, crenellations, monarchal turtles. The limitless depths issued out before us. Our leader kept closest to him, turning him at different angles when signaled. An hour later, back on deck, I spoke to him, an attorney. Still practicing? Still practicing. Now he looked so much younger, face burnished gold, flushed with the rush of the dive. Eyes creased at the corners in ripples and bright as starfish. Those were from Wings of a Stranger, During the summer, I started work on a new manuscript, and I'd like to conclude my session by reading 2 poems from that work done during the past summer. This is the first time I'm reading them. I'm reading them publicly. The first one is called A Former Plantation. And I make a reference again to Casuarina's Flamboyance and Bread and Cheese, which are names of trees in Barbados. A Former Plantation. Tuffy palms with long muscular ostrich necks overlook Casuarinas leaning like old men. Oversee the flamboyant stoic blood. Meadows of small cane stalks rustle in green, content in their adolescence, not like us, so eager for the inevitable, to be grown, to be harvested. A ridge of waving palms, a crane lifting like a thought. The outhouses' locks are huge and rusty. The main building's now a manufacturing concern. Close up, palm thighs are even burlier, more alive than earlier implied. A re-memory, perhaps, of some prehistoric birds. Below the ridge, on a wide slope that runs between 2 random rows of thorned bread and cheese, the laborer's village. And farther ahead, dark openings of gullies wrapped in the deep, hurting green of mahogany, breadfruit, tamarind, ackee. They'd have worked the cane mill. They'd have worked the surround of cane fields, mauve stalks like prison bars. They'd have seen the seamless blend of sky and misty ocean, the cranes forever lifting, soaring and returning like their own thoughts of freedom. And this last piece is a narrative piece I did. It emerged after reading a book called The Diaries of Carolina Maria de Jesus. I'll tell you a little bit about her. But one of my colleagues was putting out her books, doing some spring cleaning, and I passed by down the hallway, and she said, Tony, help yourself, right? So I'm browsing through and so on, and this particular book caught my attention, and I plucked it out, and that was in the spring. During the summer, I had a chance to read the book, and I could not put it down. It literally, grabbed me by the scuff of my neck, so to speak. Maria Carolina de Jesus, she was born in 1914, died in 1977. She lived in a Sao Paulo favela, or shanty slum. She was black, illegitimate, poor, but she became Brazil's best-selling author at the age of 46 with the publication of her diaries. She kept an account of her life in the ghetto, or the shanty town, or the favela, what they call the favela. And this book was published in 1961, Quarto de Despejo, translated meaning the garbage room. There was an English translation that was done of it in 1962 called Child of the Dark, which is the one that I have. There's also a reference in this poem to Ras Hole. That's R-A-S-S-H-O-L-E. And if you take off the R, it is exactly what you think it means. But that's how we say it in the Caribbean, with an R at the front. So there are no children in here, that's fine. But that's the only expletive, so. With an R. And the poem is called Every Carolina. I know your daily reluctant walk to the spigot, my standpipe, teeming with jars, cans, gossip, crudeness, its glamorization exposed. We know there was more nastiness here than all the sentimental notions of folk beauty and stories told by faultless matriarchs. The stories we heard cut like the raw edge of a tongue. The middle class do nothing but sentimentalize your pain to expiate their own guilt of desertion or good luck. I see you each morning in the lengthening line of hunger. Witness the human feces smeared on the pipe stand. This is the favela, the ghetto. I walk the length of my own gap with paint skillets to get water from the standpipe. I did my business in an outhouse with brown bag paper for wipes. One full skillet is with me in the adjacent bathing area, always damp, fetid, home of millipedes and large oozing slugs. I respond to your honest, transparent heart, blooded by trial, pumping the true salve of survival. Hitting the streets of Canning Day, collecting paper to sell at the junkyard, to get a meal for the children, to get them something to wear. Some mornings there's no food, some days there's no paper. You look for scrap metal, gain the tomato factory, for fruit spilled during offloading. Sometimes you sleep with one child's father, so he'll give something, shoes, a dress, some cruzeros, when he comes and sends the children to buy candy so you can be together. At times like these, you're disgusted to be a woman. Your spirit flaps like a bird when he goes away. This is the favela, the ghetto. Yet your integrity is intact, a woman of your word, keeping the promise not to mention his name in your diaries or give it to the newspapers. Sometimes you sleep with Mr. Manuel, the most distinguished man here, with a strong work ethic like you, never missing a day from work. He too is generous when he has his way, when you don't anger him by flirting with immigrant men, the Bayanos, the gypsies. You're in the favela, but you're not favela. You're in the ghetto, but you're not ghetto. You save your smiles for the children. Your favela reaches northward to a pothole gap just outside Bridgetown, Barbados, where a woman borrows water from a neighbor because hers was cut off. A hose like a green snake writhes across the road from the neighbor's yard to yours. But the neighbor's sister speaks to no one, including her sister. She curses her children, constantly calls them names, idiot, fool, rascal. She has several children from different men. The empty promises of help, the men finally fleeing their cares, leaving step ladders of children who no longer find unusual the sight of a naked woman. Children immune to every vice. This cycle you dreamed of breaking, to get out of the favela, away from the pedophilia, to have a nice home, to escape the scandalous spigot, the smell of rotten mud mixed with feces, the fetid collecting pools of bath water behind shacks, releasing their animal pen stench through the mud tracks, the curse of hunger, the curse of thieves. You contain aches I've known and seen in others, no matter what the class. Unities of abuse by men, self-appointed owners, goalers, critics. After 5 children, Mrs. Stout's forgotten in a domestic cell, while Mr. Stout indulges with 4 others. When she places her arms around him, he wanted to know why she was doing that, said it didn't suit her. The brick house she lives in is the kind you always dreamed of owning. Potted plants in the porch, a room for each child. While my poverty was mild in comparison to the perpetual lines of shacks on Sao Paulo hillsides, my neighborhood a fraction the size of Canning Day. From here, I've caught congruous echoes that penetrate the barrier of language. And another echo reached me when flesh rose like poems on your dream of freedom. While the world toasted the success of your diary, Brazil's foppish literati, culture managers, academics, writers, ignored you still, found ways to pull you down. And so, 26 years after your body became a dry branch and your spirit soared heavenward, after pauper's burial at Villa Cipo, I hear your voice husky and strong like a blues singer. The South's deciduous kudzu and the island strands of orange love vines coil and loop in a lovely, dangerous embrace. I see your arms in flight like a cobbler's wings, pumping implacably over my coast in search of food, refusing to die, refusing to be silenced. Thank you.